Well, pull up a chair and set a spell here at Tales from SYL Ranch Live, the vlogcast that reminds you to always know where your towel is. And I'm your host, Bill Stone. And tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we have the Fandi Masters mini review of Doctor Who Season 11, Episode 9, It Takes You Away. So to explain my show, for the purposes of new viewers or people that might be watching me in the archives, I do live reviews. Sometimes I do serious films and TV, sometimes I do schlock, and sometimes I do serious films and TV that have a broad appeal, like, well, Doctor Who. Usually, however, I stick to a period from about 1900 to 1980, and that's because the period after 1980 is pretty well documented because of all the great science fiction we got after Star Wars and all of the technology that we got that allowed us to document it. But there's a lot of science fiction and a lot of science fiction fandom that happened between 1900 and 1980 that isn't very well documented. So part of the reason I do the show is to document it. I will take any and all questions, comments, and nasty remarks. You can tell me if I missed something, if I'm completely full of crap, or if I'm just an amazingly hoopy frood, which is far more likely. I go into more depth than most reviewers. I don't just talk about whether I liked a film or not. I talk about acting, directing, cinematography, some of the mechanics of making a film. And I could do this because a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor, so I can talk with a little authority. Not as much authority as a modern working actor, never want to give that impression, but with some authority. As they often say, those who can do, and those who can't teach. And my reviews are probably a little more like teaching. However, on my mini reviews, like this one for Doctor Who, I don't go into the same kind of depth because I don't have the same kind of time to do it as I do on my Monday reviews, but I think you're going to find that I still go into more depth than just about any other YouTuber you're ever going to find. I try not to tell you just how I felt or how you may have felt. I try to tell you why you felt that way. What mechanical things went into making you feel a certain way inside of a film or TV show. Larry says, back at the rocks. Yes, I'm back at Vesca's rocks. As I said, I sort of ran out of places to put the TARDIS, and so over my shoulder, if you look very, very carefully up there, you'll see I've placed the TARDIS on the Vesca's rocks. For those who aren't familiar, Vesca's rocks is a sort of iconic spot where a couple of very famous Star Trek episodes, one in particular called Arena, the one with the Gorn in it, occurred, and it happens to look good under lighting, so what the hell, you know. Now, non-spoiler review on this one. This is the second time I really just outright disliked an episode. I mean, I honestly didn't just dislike it. I kind of hated it. I thought it was confusing. The whole notion about what was happening and why made no sense whatsoever. And it wasn't entirely that made one want to kill it. The last time I really hated an episode was when they went and they really kind of caricatured Americans and made a very heavy-handed attempt to, you know, whack us over the head with a Donald Trump thing. And this had some of the same problems. There was a character in this one whom, as someone who is a father, I just wanted to punch him in the face. I really hated that character, and I disliked it a lot. Heartstrings much? No, not really. Not really, no. In addition to all that, the episode felt very padded to me. It had unneeded characters and locations. I think if I had been writing this, it would have chopped out at least half the episode. I think it could have been done for half an hour. I think that's how much actual plot was in this. And as always, as has sadly been the case with this entire season, we have absolutely no character development of any kind for anyone. Those are the non-spoiler reasons why I did not like this show. So, having given you the non-spoiler, I'll issue myself a...
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All hands, prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert, and that is because I am the Fandi master, and that means that the fandom is strong with me, and that means that nothing is new, nothing is original, and at worst I figure it out about a half an hour early. This is not a boast or a brag. This is unfortunately where you find yourself after having watched, read, and listened to about 100 years worth of science fiction. You just can't see the new stuff for the whole century that came before, and you discover there just isn't that much that's new in the world, and it'll often interfere with your ability to enjoy things. Not the case on this one. There were things I didn't see coming, but they were bad things, and my ability to not enjoy this episode did not have to do with those things. It had to do with other stupid things. So if you're sitting here past this spoiler alert, we will assume that you have watched the episode, or that you just don't care that you're going to have the whole thing spoiled for you. As I mentioned last week, I'd like to point this out because I really like this poster. This is a painting. I believe it was done by Alex Ross. His style seems unmistakable to me in this painting. He's a brilliant artist. If you're not familiar with Alex Ross and his art, become familiar with Alex Ross and his art, because it's really quite amazing. Anything that he makes looks photorealistic in a way that most of the time, particularly when you're doing art for superheroes, which he's done quite a lot of, does not look photorealistic. I often have said, most comic artists just sort of spray paint on characters' costumes. It's almost as if they have a second skin with nothing else. It's like body paint almost. Alex Ross's art is totally different, and he does photorealistic things of people that he's painted that have posed for various things he's doing. So, very, very good artist. Hang on a second while I slide my thing over so I can see my... Actually, let me pop out my chat so I can put that up in an appropriate place to look at it a little better, if it's going to come up, which apparently it's not, which means I have to... Okay, well, I'll move this window around so I can see it more. Alien impersonating dead loved ones, oldest trope in SF. Yeah, you have watched the episode. Yeah. Not going to go into a synopsis on this one. We assume if you sat past the spoiler alert, you saw the episode. I don't care that I'm going to spoil it for you. Okay, I always like to get my cringe moments out of the way. This episode was extremely cringe heavy. The Solar Tract. What? What the hell did that mean? It didn't even make any sense. I had to go back and rewatch it. I did not watch this episode more than once because it left a very bad taste in my mouth for reasons that I knew what were. But I did go back and I listened to that explanation 3 times, and it still made no sense. The explanation is, prior to the beginning of our universe, somehow our universe exiled this intelligence called the Solar Tract to another universe, and then our universe could begin. What? I'm sorry, that doesn't make any level of sense. It was a bedtime story from one of the Doctor's grandmothers. It actually does work as a bedtime story or a fairy tale, because in reality it makes no frickin' sense whatsoever. Just a huge cringe moment. I was like, what the hell is she saying? It didn't make any sense. Then there's the character of Eric, and he is the reason that I really hated this episode. The guy needs to be arrested for either child neglect and or abuse. He set up speakers in his forest to scare his blind child. And then he completely blew her off because he found his dead wife in some alternate dimension. And he doesn't have any particular intent, apparently, to ever come back. Again, as a father, it made me want to punch him in the face. And as usual, because he's a great character, Graham had the right line. You got to get your priorities straight, mate. There were also unnecessary characters in this one. The character of Ribbons, the alien who is leading them through this strange alternate dimension that they're in. He started out looking like a bad guy and then basically just turned into a red shirt. And if you're not familiar, when we talk about red shirts, really what that means is In Star Trek, a lot of people in red shirts got killed off. They got killed off so that they could, show to the audience just how serious the situation was. That's why he was killed off, just to show the audience how serious this situation was. When you have to do that, just make up red shirts, come on, man. Unnecessary character. There were also unnecessary locations. We did not need that AntiZone. That was there to just provide artificial danger via these moth things that they had. It was superfluous to the plot. The Doctor and her friends could have simply walked through any special effect-laden thing that they wanted to, maybe walk them through just a black void or a white void and just come out on the other side. The end result is the same. The end result of that, being there or not, is the same. You walk in one end, walk out the other end. That thing being there had no purpose other than to provide totally artificial drama that you did not need to have. When you look at those things in a plot, you say, what happens if I take it out? And the answer is, when you take that out, nothing happens to the plot. Absolutely nothing happens to the plot if that whole thing is gone. Then there was Hana's blindness. Could the reveal for that have been any more obvious, right? Could it have been any more obvious? I mean, admittedly, I had done enough research to know something about the actress who plays Hana, but by the same token, I saw that coming a mile away, and I think most other viewers would have too. Larry says, only wear red Star Trek uniforms to be like Scotty, not to be disposable. Yeah, exactly. I'm a big Scotty fan myself. I've never shown it on the show because I keep it in a place. I got it in a place. It's intentionally something that can be covered up by professional attire so it wouldn't affect my ability to get, hired in professional situations. On the original series, let me see if I can find my command insignia copy of it here. In the original series, the insignia that they had on their chest had a different little design on the inside for every single job. People who were engineers and security officers had a little curlicue inside of it. I have that curlicue on this shoulder blade right there. Got it as a thing that I did to celebrate my being divorced. Yeah, I'm a big Scotty fan. I have somewhere out, I'm not sure if it's public, but I have a, because I can't fit into, I could never fit into ever again and look good in an original series uniform costume. I would look terrible. If I went to a con like that, I would be that guy, the one who looked too fat. So I have my own sort of wish list that has in it the things that I would put together if I were making sort of an engineering jacket uniform. And it's not like the bomber jackets that we saw. This is totally original for me. It would be like an original series jacket uniform, because I think if I ever got the money to buy it, and it's not entirely cheap, some of it, if I went to a con, I could get away with it and I would look good. But yeah, that's what red shirts are really for, to be engineers and smart guys, not to be the poor saps who got fried because they needed to kill someone to show you how important how serious the situation was, which is what they always use them for in Star Trek. But in terms of Hana's blindness, again, the reveal for that was extremely predictable to me. And this is where we run into some of the SJW stuff. I have said before that I don't generally see it here. The Doctor being female has not struck me as being particularly SJW. I don't think that's what's wrong with the series. I'll go into that again when I get into it a little bit later. I don't really see that here. But I did see it here on that particular one with Hana and her blindness, because I'm sorry, guys, I'm sorry to tell you, people at BBC and other people who might romanticize people who have disabilities such as this, I know blind people, and blindness has real-world consequences. Can the average blind person be Can it be made so that they can wander around their own house, their own apartment unaided? Yes, it can, but only if you don't move anything. What they do is they learn where things are in relation to other things. If you want to screw up a blind person, move their end table 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches the wrong direction, and they will bump into it. If you plunge them through a weird mirror with no idea what's on the other side of it, no. I'm sorry, just no. And to be honest, that AntiZone set, in which they spent a lot of their time running around with Ryan when she did, I'm quite certain that that was very well rehearsed, so that the actress, Ellie Walwork, wouldn't bump into the walls or trip. She is legitimately, has been blind since birth. I did that much research, and I know that she was blind since birth. The other thing that you may notice on that set is they have a smoke machine running on the floor throughout much of that, and that is for a real simple reason. They would have to clear that floor of everything. Just clear of it of everything. And you couldn't do the kind of detailing on a, kind of an interior cave set that you might have wanted to do on there, because she might trip over some stuff. So they made that floor probably bare and hit it with that smoke machine. So I'm sorry, guys. Do not romanticize people who have those kinds of disabilities. They really are disabilities. You don't suddenly turn into Daredevil with, enhanced, all kinds of enhanced senses because you're blind. Yes, you do pick up some more on those senses, no question about that. But it's not like you can just go out there and do anything that you want to. It isn't possible. It's an actual disability that has real-world consequences. And when it's minimized like this and something like that, I go, social justice warrior crap. Social justice warrior. They're saying, oh, okay, anybody is the same. They're all the same. All of this stuff doesn't matter. No, I'm here to tell you. From blind people that I've known for decades, it matters. It matters a lot. The great moments. Well, I guess the idea of the Sola Tract surprised me, but in a bad way. I was kind of afraid as a Fandi master. I was watching this. I'm going, I wonder if this is going to turn out to be one of those mirror universe sorts of deals, Well, okay, it didn't. But subverting my expectations in this way was with a stupid idea. And so subverting your expectations is not good that way. Beyond that, I really have no great moments. It was a dumb episode written by someone who apparently has no idea what the term child abuse means, because that's what was going on here. And speaking of which, the writer on this is Edie Time. He has an IMDb that goes 2010 to 2018 with 2 credits, with a very large gap between 2011 and 2018. His other credit is for 2 episodes of a TV series called Skins, which I have not the slightest idea what is. And given only 2 credits, he's not won no awards. I pretty much went through it. His writing sucks. I went through it when I got my cringe moments. Not a hell of a lot else to say. Hate giving really bad reviews to somebody. But I'm sorry. The plot was stupid. There were unnecessary characters and locations. You could have pulled a bunch of stuff out of this and made no difference whatsoever to the episode at all. They are superfluous. When you can pull things out like that and say, would the plot have changed at all if I took these things out? Well, then you should have taken them out because they were superfluous. Yeah, using a mirror like in Alice in Wonderland. No, please. Yeah. Another one, at least that's a callback to something that is fairly well established in British culture, but the moment I saw it, I went, oh, literally, and maybe it's me being the Fandi master, but the moment I saw that thing, I went, oh, okay, it's a doorway into an alternate dimension. The fact that they had to go through this other alternate dimension to get to the real alternate dimension, that was the part you could have cut or made it something simple, simple and easy, but they didn't. They had to make it into something with artificial drama. so that we could kill off a character and show just how incredibly difficult this situation really was. And again, you take it all out, the moths, that set, you take it all out, nothing changes in this script. Nothing changes whatsoever. They could have just had them walk through something big, special effects laden thing, or a black void or a white void. All you needed. You didn't have to do any of the crap that they did. Totally padded. In terms of performances, well, I always want to point out to my female friends who are fans that I get to say this time around that the Doctor is hot. I have been listening to you fangirls go on and on and on about the Doctor, Captain Jack. Hey, guess what, ladies? This time it's my turn. So if you guys get to say those things about a man, I get to say them about a woman. Call me a sexist if you will. But you know what? If you hadn't spent the last 10 years doing it, I probably wouldn't do it now. So, nah. Jodie Whittaker, she was fine. You know, one of the things that I usually figure is a mark of a good actor is when they can take crap dialogue and crap material and make it work. And, you know, pretty much she did. It wasn't her fault that they gave her crap material. She did fine. As usual, unfortunately, however, no character development whatsoever. It's one of this season's downfalls. Nobody has any character development whatsoever. Bradley Walsh as Graham. Last week, Larry, you asked me about what he was holding there in his hand, and after having a closer look at it, I have to agree with you. He's holding a conductor's wand. I have no idea where this picture came from. All I tend to do is look for pictures that are flattering to the people who I'm, showing, and that hopefully aren't copyrighted, so that I don't get killed with copyrights. I have a copyright troll our attorney's office coming after me for a pair of them right now. I keep telling them I have no money. You're not going to get a damn thing out of me, and I think they finally let me go on that basis. But there are whole copyright troll firms out there now that look for people who are using copyrighted images and come after you for extraordinary amounts of money. As always, I do like Graham the best. He is the character with whom I personally can, empathize with the most. First time there's been a character here who's about my age, tends to come up with the right answers because of his age, and has a certain amount of street savvy that's kind of nice to see. So, like Graham as always. And he knew Grace was not real, and he knew it for the same reason that Eric should have known that Trina wasn't real, which there was no way that Grace would ever have told Graham to blow off Ryan. That would never have occurred, and so he figured that out. That's good. Larry says, her constructing a sonic screwdriver on our planet using tools and materials was a bit far-fetched for me. Yeah, it was. It was me too. You're talking about something that is a telepathically operated multi-tool with the dramatic function of being a magic wand. Yeah, I don't think so either. It's fine when the TARDIS provides her with some. It's fine if she builds it in the TARDIS, but yeah, building it on Earth, no, I agree. That was unbelievable to me, the first episode. And Graham, of course, is the one who pulls out and picks out the entire sore spot for me on this entire episode when he says to Eric, you got to get your priorities straight, mate, in terms of what he's doing with his daughter there. Again, have I mentioned that I really like Graham? But again, as usual, no character development whatsoever. Mandip Gill again plays Yaz, and she, this time around, was really there to do what companions often are there for. Companions have a dual job. Usually you'll get, since 2005, you usually get a fair amount of character development with those companions, but one of the main things that a companion has to do is to be the viewer. is to be the person that the doctor can explain things to in terms of what's going on. And by the companion knowing what's going on, then the viewer knows what's going on. And so that was pretty much what her role here was. She didn't have a hell of a lot else to do. And as usual, had no character development whatsoever. Not the actress's fault. It's not any of the actors' fault on this. This is the fault of the writing. We have not gotten any character development, and I don't think we're going to see any next week. Bradley Walsh might be a musician in real life. I don't know. He's done a lot of acting work. When I went through his acting stuff when I first did the first episode, he's done a lot of acting. There may be something in which he's involved with musically. I don't know. Like I say, for me, I just looked at it and went, oh, okay. It looks like a good picture of him. I'll take that, you know. Same thing here with Mandip Gill. I'm not trying to find something that makes her look particularly sexy. It's just that when you look for images that don't appear to be copyrighted and that make the actor look good, this is the one I found. So, and it's in stark contrast, by the way, to Tosin Cole. I cannot find a very good one that's similar like that shows him on a red carpet looking, you know, really good. Not that he looks bad here, don't get me wrong, but obviously that's a very different picture than the ones I've been putting up for the other actresses. So, Dawson Cole as Ryan. Well, he called Graham Granddad, like I have been expecting him to do and said that he would do right from the first episode. I knew we'd get there eventually. It was just a question of when. Saw that one coming a mile away, if not this episode, the next, maybe the previous one. I knew he was going to do it eventually. We all knew he was going to do it eventually. Now, the interesting thing was his assumption that Hana's father had run off while kind of cold at the time actually turned out to be true. It would have made for a much more powerful thing, I think, in this. And a much better thing is once he realizes that's exactly what Eric did, was just run off and leave her, that he should have gotten a lot more in Eric's face. He should have been a lot more pissed off and saying things like, how could you do this? How could you leave your blind daughter terrified in her house on purpose? You know, because let's face it, Eric was a complete drenhole. And Ryan, the character whose father ran off on him, should have been the one to really go off on Eric. I think that would have been much better. But we just totally glossed over this fact that Eric is either a child neglector or a child abuser or potentially both. Are professional headshots copyrighted material? No, they're not. But it's also a question of resolution. Sometimes when you get into IMDb, they don't even have their headshots, which blows my mind. But also sometimes you can get the resolution that's so crappy that when I blow it up, it makes them look badly pixelated, and I try not to do that. So this is a pretty good picture of him. Don't get me wrong. It's just that unlike some of the others, it's not where you can get pictures of him where they've been doing sort of fashion model looking pictures, you know, that sort of thing. And as usual, as has been the case throughout the entire rest of the season, except for the fact that he is now predictably calling Graham Granddad, there was really no character development here whatsoever. Now, as Hana, we have Ellie Walwork. Her IMDb is 2012 to 2018 with 2 acting credits, this and an episode of Imagine some years ago. She is legitimately blind from birth. Her website bills her as an actress, a singer, and a songwriter. Judging from what I could see on her website, it seems to me like she probably more concentrates on the music side. But she's not bad. No awards, considering she's only had 2 roles. But she's not bad. She's fine. She is a young actress who has not a lot of experience, but with some talent. I think it was great in terms of the writing that she knew that Trina was not her mom. I think it would have been even better if she'd recognized that Eric was an abuser. That's the part that just pissed me off the entire episode, is that guy just ran off on her. He put speakers out in the middle of the forest to intentionally scare her, his blind daughter, and left her there to fend for herself for God knows how long. That's child neglect and or child abuse. This guy needs to be arrested. Then we have everybody else. This is one of those reviews that's probably not going to take me as long as you might think. We have everybody else. Okay. There's Ribbons. I'm not even going to go into the actors too much because they're not on the screen that long. Ultimately, again, he was a red shirt. He died to prove how serious the situation was, but in reality he was a superfluous character. The Doctor and her companions could have found their way to the next portal completely without him. If you took him out, nothing would have changed. And that's not his fault. That's not his fault. That's the writing. The actor did a fine job considering. Then there's Eric, the crappy father. At best, he is neglecting his child, a blind girl. At worst, he is abusing her by setting up speakers to intentionally scare her out in the forest. And I wanted to punch the guy in the face. But, again, the writing, not the acting. For what little we saw of him, the actor was fine. It was just that I could not watch this without wanting to punch that guy in the face. There's several other characters. Trina, who is not real. She is not really a character. She is part of this stupid plot point. Does okay, but there's not much point in talking about a character who's not really a character. There's Grace, again, not real. What do you have to say about somebody who's essentially part of the situation that they're in rather than being a character themselves? The actress did a fine job. And then there's the last character I have to talk about. Oh my God. The frog. I'm not even going to talk about the frog here. I have other things to say about that frog when it comes to the production aspects of this show. I'm going to go over the ratings a little bit here. Didn't last week because I didn't have the information available to me. Now, when we look at the ratings here, explaining again, since the last time I had to explain this, the overnight TV ratings only include those who watched it live and those who recorded it and watched it later that night. Now, the consolidated TV ratings include those who recorded and watched it within a week, which makes them a more accurate measure of how many people were actually watching. Then there's that AI, the Audience Appreciation Index score, which is a score of out of 100 that's used to indicate the public's appreciation for a show. Now, over 90 is considered exceptional, 85 or over is excellent, 60 or less is poor, and less than 55 is very poor. Now, in terms of how these things stack up, well, they're not bad ratings. Capaldi's ratings were generally worse. I think proving my theory that people who watch Doctor Who don't want to see companions die in horrible ways or have a giant hole through their chests or watch nothing but washed out programs where the Doctor from day one is not certain that he is a good person. As you can see here, as I mentioned the last time I did this, we have a very large number at episode 1, but not surprisingly, who isn't going to watch the first female Doctor? It has been sort of dropping off. It dropped off for several weeks after that, with the last couple of 3 weeks being about consistent in terms of the consolidated ratings. The AI has not changed too terribly much, wavering in the 80 range, which puts it average-ish, not great, but average-ish. But again, these are not terrible ratings. It is better than Capaldi was generally getting. It's basically staying constant for the last couple of weeks with some slow dropping. But it's not a good trend. But by the same token, the ratings are such that it isn't saying that things are going to get canceled by any means. But we do still have some problems. And the problem, as I've said since the beginning, and in very particularly the last several episodes, and I'm going to say the same damn things again, because the same damn things apply. What's the problem with this show so far? The problem is Chris Chibnall. What he is missing in this season, and I can't imagine it's going to suddenly pop up in the last episode, a good characterization for all the companions. That's very important in post-2005 Doctor Who, because most of the characterization has been about the companions. He is missing season-long arcs. This is simply how people expect drama to be told now. Even Star Trek no longer does one-and-done shows where they do a story and then the crew moves on to another one. They do arc-like stories. That is what today's modern viewers expect, and we particularly expect it in Doctor Who, where we have an arc that may go an entire season, or in the case of Matt Smith, an arc that went his entire tenure as the Doctor. And at least the season-long ones will usually build up to some kind of climax in the last couple of 3 episodes. It's how Doctor Who has done it since 2005. It has worked very successfully. And not doing it here, I think, is to the detriment of the show in general. Larry says mostly B grades. Yeah, for the most part. There have been a few in here that I thought were good. We have never seen a stellar episode. There's nothing that I could point to that I say, wow, this was really good. There were a few where I could point to and say, okay, those are pretty good. But there's nothing here so far that we've seen that was great. Say it over and over. I think it a choice to make the Doctor much lighter, both in tone and visually, was a very good thing. I think one of the problems with Capaldi was nobody, a big sign that should be on the writer's room. When you take the Doctor too dark, people stop watching. And they did that throughout Capaldi, and it suffered in the ratings because of it. I also think it's a good thing that he's taken to a faster-paced Doctor, which Capaldi simply could not do. Guys about my age, probably better conditioned than I am. But still, the pressure of doing the schedule of that show meant that was a problem right off the bat. And then all the running around that the Doctor used to do before that, you'd kill me doing that. Even if I was in really good shape, you'd kill me at this age. You got an older Doctor, that's the problem you run into. So going back to a faster-paced Doctor is a good thing. But Chibnall is still, he has missed this whole season the big picture. He doesn't have those arcs. He doesn't have the character development. He doesn't have any of it. He is, in my opinion, the wrong person to be showrunner and head writer on this series. He has no arcs, and that is what modern viewers expect. I think the BBC actually does need to get rid of him by the end of this season, and they should hire somebody else who is similar to the way that Stephen Moffat was before Stephen Moffat jumped the shark after The Day of the Doctor. Other things about this, the direction was by Jamie Childs. We've seen Jamie Childs repeatedly direct so far this season. I think probably the most consistently used director. The direction is fairly pedestrian. It's pedestrian. Nothing jumps out at you as being particularly creative that's, doing something to attempt to make a particularly interesting mood. Now, here is one that, oddly enough, I can point you to this in terms of a contrast. Larry says, I have another cringe moment trying to open the mirror portal. Oh, yeah, reverse the polarity. Yeah. Yeah, I get that we're doing sort of a callback to the Third Doctor, the Third Doctor never actually said reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, but he would sometimes come up with much less complicated dialogue when it came to doing things like some of the scientific jargon they had to do. He just couldn't rattle it off. But reverse the polarity was something that is a callback to earlier Doctors where that was said, and yeah. Sometimes that'll work. Like in The Day of the Doctor, when both Doctors are aiming their screwdrivers and, the Time Fisher and saying, let's reverse the polarity. No, I'm reversing it, you're reversing it, we're confusing the polarity. That works. Here, not so much. I agree with you there. It does not work so much. But this direction, giving you an example of something now, I'm a big fan of what is known as the Dragnet verse, which is a whole series of television series that occur within Jack Webb's Dragnet verse. Dragnet, as in the 1950s as a radio program, also as a TV program, also as a motion picture, also as several books, then later on adding in Adam 12, Emergency, the DA, and any number of other series that occur inside of that universe. Jack Webb directed a lot of the 1960s series episodes, and Jack Webb was not a very brilliant director. However, I happened to be watching an episode from the 1950s, and they were trying to track down this killer, and he did something very damned creative. It was inside of a hospital. He put the camera low so that you could look up and see this receding hospital. You know, from the viewer's perspective, it would start out like this and recede back with lighting only in certain places. So when the bad guy came running from the hallway toward where the cops were at the front of the camera, it was this totally trapped feeling. You felt completely trapped. Like this guy had nowhere to go. You know, he was going to be shooting at them and stuff, but he had nowhere to go. He was completely trapped, and that's a way you can do some very interesting direction to do that. The only direction I can say in this that I thought was maybe a little bit inspired was the use of how they did the direction inside of this very angular production design. But I'm not clear how much of that had to do with just the fact that the production design created very angular sets, and so you had to direct a certain way. Once you get out into the open, again, nice that they have location shooting. I'm beginning to wonder if they aren't shooting locations sometimes in the same relative places. Those wooded areas that they get into are starting to look kind of repetitive to me. I don't know. I haven't researched it that far to know. But again, in terms of the direction, when he got out into those, it was very pedestrian. It was a lot of shot, reverse shot, which I'll talk about in a minute with respect to cinematography. It was, you know, a lot of wide shots, close-ups, what the script demanded, but not really setting any particular mood. So, cinematography by Dennis Crossan. We have seen his cinematography before. Couple of things, you know, I repeat it over and over. In a good movie, good TV series, you hope that there's some give and take back and forth between the director and the cinematographer. Maybe the director has a really good idea. Cinematographer says, hey, that's a great idea, but what if we do this or slightly change that angle? Or maybe we get onto the set or we get onto the location and we go, hey, wait a minute, there's something going on here in the background we can take advantage of to make this look just that much better. You hope that's going on. I have no idea whether that's happening on this series. I haven't the slightest clue, so you always have to fall back on the two standbys. You knew what you were supposed to look at, and you can see what you were supposed to see. Well, in this case, yes, you always knew what you were supposed to look at. However, on occasion, as with the last episode, there were places where I couldn't quite see what I was supposed to see. Now, maybe you didn't notice it. I always watch these things in 1080p within about an hour of them. I have them finished watching within an hour and a half of them having aired in the UK because I get 1080p screeners. And there were a couple of occasions when, because of how the lenses they were using and the way they were doing it, when they got into shot, reverse shot, pieces of the characters' faces would go slightly out of focus. Now, if you don't know what shot, reverse shot is, suppose we're doing a shot of me, right, and I'm speaking to somebody, and you'll see their shoulders and their head here while I'm giving my line. Then we switch, and you see my shoulders and head here while they're giving their line. That's shot, reverse shot. And they'll do it very simply that way. It saves a lot of time and money. You can sit here and have the conversation take place between the two of us, flip the camera around to do the conversation a second time, and then edit it together to be shot, reverse shot. But there were moments when I noticed it, particularly with Graham when he was talking to Grace, that his face would go slightly out of focus. And this may simply be a function of 1080p. And it wasn't his whole face. It wasn't his whole face. It was where, like, this side of it would go slightly out of focus as he would turn his head just slightly to one direction or another. And that may be because of the 1080p. 1080p is a bitch. It really is a bitch. It's only been something good for viewers. It is really tough to deal with when you're dealing with things like makeup, when you're dealing with costuming. You know, everybody likes to look at Star Trek, the original series, now when we can see it in high def and go, man, that looks like a set, man, that looks like a, you know, character, like a mask, man, that looks like this. Well, back then they didn't have that. It was crappy, low def, analog broadcast television that nobody ever thought was going to be seen in that. So you could get away with doing that sort of thing. Now, God, they have to slather the actors' faces in makeup. And if there's any skin imperfections whatsoever, you have to, you know, cover over them very damn carefully. Otherwise, the makeup looks terrible. And when you get into do the things like doing shot, reverse shot, where you're doing fairly close work like that, if you're not doing the cinematography just perfectly, even a slight movement of a character's head when they turn just slightly may cause a piece of their face to become unfocused. And I saw that happening a couple of times. It wasn't a big deal. It really wasn't a big deal. Maybe only somebody with my kind of eye for this would even catch it. But it is something that probably is a function of 1080p, and it's just a bitch to work with. It's just a bitch to work with. Visual effects, again, by Martin Western. The visual effects were fine. I had no problem with any of the visual effects except for one thing. And I don't know if that was a visual effect or if it was an on-screen animatronic. I think it was an on-screen animatronic. And that was the frog. Oh my God. Did that thing look completely fake? That frog at the end sitting on the chair looked totally fake. I think if I'd been doing the show and I took one look at that thing during the dailies, I would say, okay, that's it. We're getting rid of the frog. We're going to substitute that. This is what I would have done right from the start, because all of the other characters that pop in there, you know, Grace, Trina, they're all people who are mean something, who are meaningful people to the characters that they are playing to. If it were me, the immediate person that I would have thought about bringing in there would have been Susan. You know, you could get the actress who played Susan in An Adventure in Space and Time and bring her in for 5 minutes. Or perhaps bring in Missy for 5 minutes, or even River Song for 5 minutes. You know, anyone to tie this doctor back to her past, to someone that is meaningful in her past. I mean, it should have been doable. You'd only need them for like half an hour, given what they were shooting there. And clearly there was a lot of special effect going on in the background. All you'd need somebody is for like half an hour. I don't think you'd have to have them for very long. That's what I would have done. I would certainly not have used that frog. That frog just looked so fake to me in every way. You don't even usually call this stuff out unless it looks totally fake, and that one looked totally fake to me on Doctor Who. So, the frog. Oh. Production design by Arwell Jones. He's done production design almost all the way through here. I generally liked the production design on this one. The geometric shape of this house, this whole sort of triangular thing, right? You didn't have to shoot that. You didn't have to come up with production design that would have shot that on what would have mounted to the top floor or the attic of this kind of a cottage. You could have shot that anywhere on any flat surface, but they didn't. And that production design, that angular production design, was consistent throughout the entire episode. And that is one of those things. You remember when I was talking about Jack Webb and that one episode of Dragnet from 1950s that I saw? That's another thing that helps you feel trapped. It gives a feeling of claustrophobia because you don't have anywhere to go aside from these angles. You just don't have much of any place to go. It gives you this kind of feeling of being trapped, and it was on both sides, both houses. And it also continued right through to when they got rid of all the other characters and got rid of the universe in general, and we're just back to this stuff. Again, it was this angular, triangular kind of production design, and I thought that worked pretty well. It lent an air of being sort of trapped to the whole thing, and I thought that was good. And so that's why I I don't know how much of that would have been any input from the director. You also hope that there's lots of collaboration going on between directors and production designers, but it may just have been that the director was presented with this production design, and so that's why they shot the way they did. And then there was the AntiZone. The AntiZone looked exactly like a generic winding set that could be redressed from shot to shot, so it looked like they were winding around it from one place to another. But it sure looked to me like a generic set in a pretty bad way. You used to see this fairly frequently in classic Doctor Who, where they would build one or two like hallway sets, and they'd keep going back and forth with them, maybe with a slightly different camera angle on them so it would make it look like it's a different hallway. But ultimately, you're just dealing with a hallway set. That's what that struck like to me. It also struck me as some of, you could talk about Star Treks when they're using, certain types of foam and a plaster to create an interior cave set. Kind of struck me like that. It did not look very good to me. And again, the whole thing, totally relevant to the story, could have been gotten rid of completely. Makeup is by Amy Riley once again, and clearly this would have been something where she had a lot to do with Ribbon's makeup, that alien who was there to be the bad guy and then the red shirt of the episode. However, I am starting to notice a pattern in her alien makeup. Now, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's just becoming sort of predictable. It's not as bad as, say, Star Trek from Star Trek The Next Generation on, when any given alien character, if they wanted to show them alien, they'd give them some kind of prosthetic forehead piece or something, ridges on their noses or stuff like that. That was incredibly predictable after a while. But these are becoming predictable. If you look at the alien character makeup she's done so far, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. But it's starting to become predictable. If I were getting in that situation, if I were her, I would probably say, okay, from this moment on, the first 3 ideas that I have for this alien character, I'm going to throw out. I'm going to throw them out and come up with something totally new. That's what I would be doing if I were her. Again, it's not bad. It's just becoming kind of predictable. Costuming is done again by Ray Holman. These were generally practical costumes. Obviously, he would have had some costumes going on with our alien who was the red shirt. And there was nothing wrong with those. Most of the costumes, however, you're seeing are what would people like this be wearing, modern day characters. What would they be wearing? What sort of things would tell something about them as persons? One of the interesting things I did notice, the first time I noticed it was with Eric's t-shirt. He has a Slayer t-shirt that in the other universe is reversed. It is an exact mirror image. And so I went back because I was curious. I didn't see it the first time around. It's the only time, the 2 times that I went back and watched something twice because I wanted to look for it. Yeah, the regular characters, their clothes were reversed as well. It wasn't quite as obvious because of what they wear, but they were reversed. Now, I don't know if that was achieved simply by reversing the image on the video. Maybe. I don't know. If not, then it was good costuming to do that sort of thing. I'd have to look at their hairstyles and stuff. Maybe they reversed their hairstyles too. Maybe it's just that they reversed the whole image. I don't know. But it was a neat little touch, I thought. If you're going to do that, neat little touch. Music again, Sagun Akinola. It fit the action. There is, again, nothing in here that jumped out at me as amazing nor as bad. Just fit the action. It was serviceable. There was nothing wrong with it. I far prefer to hear music coming out that makes me want to jump up and down and say things really great about it, but this episode couldn't. It was what it was. It was serviceable. So let me check the good old clock on the wall. By God, I'm going to make it probably about an hour, a little bit more, because it's something I'm going to be doing with the end of this month. At the end of the review, we can ask ourselves, is it any good? Nope. It sucked. I would recommend giving this one a miss. I thought it was confusing with that whole thing with the solid track and all of that. Made no damn sense whatsoever. I wanted to punch Eric in the face because he is at least guilty of child neglect. At worst, it's child abuse, and he's a crappy father regardless. It felt padded. There were unnecessary locations and characters. If I'd been writing this, I would have chucked all that out, and this would have been a half-hour episode. And as always, as we have through this entire season, it is the biggest detriment more than anything else of this season. We have no character development of anyone. And Chris Chibnall, I'm looking at you. So, I have something coming up that I'm going to change the way that I'm doing the end of this month. I had been going to do a marathon live stream for celebrating New Year's Eve. And last week discovered that one of my regular viewers' brother is a campfire survivor from Paradise, California. So I changed what I'm going to do. On New Year's Day, I'm going to hold a 5-hour charity live stream that's going to raise money for campfire survivors. Now, I'm not sure which charity yet. Super Cruise 63, if you're watching this now or in the archives, please contact me at wrs@wrstone.com because I'd like to speak to you very specifically about this. And also that evening I'll be doing non-spoiler reviews of Doctor Who Season 2, the Orville Season 2, Episode 1. Non-spoiler reviews because I want to get people in here. I don't want to spoil things for them. So there'll be non-spoiler reviews for the Orville and the Doctor Who New Year's Day special. That said, as you can see, my times for this are going to be a little different. I want to get this thing over with before midnight on the East Coast. So it'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain, and 3 p.m. Pacific. And for the first time, if it's off of UTC, it'll be 11 p.m. rather than sometime the next morning. And all that said, I want to say something about that. I mentioned last week when I discovered it, I said to Super Cruise 63 that science fiction fans, we have always been kind of an extended family to each other. And I can tell you that as the Fandi master, I have witnessed this for decades. We can go back as far in my recollection as when Robert A. Heinlein would inspire people to donate blood at every convention that he went to. We have been something of an extended family. And not only have I witnessed it now for decades, fanish history tells us that this is who we have always been. Now, we always, and it goes back long before The Last Jedi or anything modern, we will always disagree about our favorite film, TV show, story, sometimes very vociferously and often emotionally. However, when it comes down, when the chips are down and the need arises, we have never failed to help our fellow fans in need. This is who we have been for more than 100 years, and we can be damned proud of it. And as I say, one of my regular viewers is a close relative who lost everything in California's Camp Fire. So my New Year's Day live stream will be devoted to supporting a charity that will help he and other victims get back on their feet. So I would ask you to please join that live stream and spread the word to other fans. I don't care if everybody watches every other review I do. That would be nice, but I don't care. But I'd really like to see people showing up for this so that we can really raise some money for it. So tell your friends, tell people about it. And again, the time is different. It'll be 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Pacific, and for the first time, if you're working off of UTC, it's going to be the same day, but 11 p.m. So remember this, and be proud, because we are fans. When one of our own is down, we will always help them up. It's who we are, and it's who we've been for more than a century, and it sets us apart from everyone else among the stars. So, in closing, might do a little bit of my ad copy. next Sunday on Tales from SYL Ranch. Answering 9 separate distress calls, the doctor and team arrive on the remnants of a brutal battlefield on an alien planet with many secrets. A deadly reckoning awaits the doctor and team once they have the answers. That's next Sunday on the Fandi Masters mini-review of the final episode of this season of Doctor Who, The Battle of Rangskor Avkolos. Then tomorrow, on Tales from SYL Ranch, scientist André Delambre becomes obsessed with his latest creation, a matter transporter. Now he decides to use a human subject himself, with tragic consequences. That's tomorrow on the Fandi Masters 60th anniversary review of The Fly. And, of course, Tales from SYL Ranch, well, through next week anyway, will be live Sundays and Mondays on YouTube at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific. And if you're working off of UTC, that'll be 2 a.m. the next day. In terms of my upcoming reviews, I do have a schedule on my website, www.wrstone.com. I suggest you go there. Give you a hint, if you go to that schedule and you click on any given item in there, I try very hard to put in there somewhere you're probably going to be able to watch it for free. So I tried that. May not be 1080p quality, but it'll be free. After The Fly tomorrow, I am next week, of course, finally getting around to, on December 10th, Superman, the movie, the one I've been looking forward to for quite some time. Can practically review this one backwards and forwards, but I'm going to have a lot of interesting stuff in there, hopefully, for you. December 17th, Quatermass and The Pit hits its 60th anniversary, and December 26th, coming in that week of the of Christmas. On December 26th, I will be doing a review of the silly film but fun one, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. And, of course, on New Year's Day, I will be doing a 5-hour charity live stream again to raise money for campfire survivors. And again, the times are a little bit different. 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central, 4 Mountain, 3 Pacific, and 11 p.m. if you're on UTC. January 7th, we will have the 70th anniversary of The Son of Frankenstein. And on January 14th, the 100th anniversary review of The Mistress of the World. Now, if you like what I'm doing, please do like, sub, hit the notification bell, tell all your friends, family, and neighbors to do the same, and all of their livestock. And do definitely show up again for my New Year's Eve 5-hour charity live stream. And in this instance, usually about this time, I will beg for money. Not the rest of this month. Not the rest of this month. I'm not going to beg for money. I would like you to save any contributions that you might have for that 5-hour charity live stream, because there are others who need that money a hell of a lot more than I do. So I do want to, thank my viewers who have contributed, some of which I'm already using. And if you do contribute to me after January 1st, hang on to your money till January 1st. Use that towards people who need it more. But if you do contribute after that, all of that money will accumulate toward a laptop that will make a lot of my technical issues around here totally disappear. And also, as always, have to thank the people who have been contributing to me and are contributing to me. It is an ego boost, and at the same time, makes me feel like I'm getting paid to both have opinions and do a little bit of showmanship, which this show has to be. So I guess that's all the time that we have today, boys and girls. So tune in again tomorrow for the Fandi Masters 60th anniversary review of The Fly. Until then, this is Tales from SYL Ranch, the vlogcast that reminds you to always know where your towel is, especially if you sit down to try to watch this episode. And I'm your host, Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.